Welcome to today's session. Okay, so welcome everyone to today's social system mapping deep dive session, March 16th, 2020. For those of you who are still not introduced to the new format or who are just getting used to it, why won't my, there. You all know me, I don't have to say this part. So we have this year in 2020, we have a new format for our on-ramp sessions, which is on the second Monday, we have an on-ramp, which is an introductory level session where we almost always share someone's social system map, walk through it and ask questions. And in April, Lisa is going to share the human systems dynamics map. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, so hope you guys can join us. So that's a really good place to send people who are brand new to the concept and or a great place just to see more maps than you have in your own portfolio or that you've been in and worked on and to get some very basic grasp of what we're talking about. That's the second Monday of every month. The third Monday, we have these deep dive conversations which grow out of topics that come up in the on-ramp that are sort of too big to address in a few minutes. And so today's deep dive conversation is going to be about, and this is a topic that first came from Jim Best and I've heard it repeated in other contexts, which is about, are there typologies of social system mapping projects that we could think about and help us guide our process or our methodology as we're going through a project. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then the fourth Monday of the month is what we call Tech Talk, which is a combination of Tim and or Christine demonstrating a new feature or a cool feature that we think, well, that is subtle and nobody's using because they don't really know it's there. And so demonstrating a feature that you might be interested in and answering technical questions. So that's our overall format in general. Today we're gonna, I'm doing greetings and agenda review right now. We're not going to do introductions and breakouts today. We're going to do it in the chat, and I'll give you a moment to do that in a minute because we're going to do breakouts later on. I just wanted to touch for a couple moments on the present moment to acknowledge where we're at. And then I'm going to go through, so as I was, I'll say what I'm going to say when I get there, but we'll go through an overview of possible dimensions for generating a typology because I don't have one. And then we're going to do a Padlet activity and a small group activity. And this is going to be an experiment. I haven't led anybody through a Padlet activity before, but it's the simplest tool that I could find to do this with. And I'm really hoping that it works. But if you are having technical difficulties or the Padlet doesn't work for you, don't worry about it. You can just do your part, jot it down on a piece of paper, or just keep it in your head and talk about it when the time comes for talking. So don't let the technology be a barrier. And then we'll have a wrap up and close. And as always, we'll have an extra optional half hour if anybody wants to stick around after the top of the hour, after we close, to continue the discussion. So that's today's agenda. What I'm going to have you do now, and I'm going to stop sharing so we can all take a moment to do this in the chat and look at the chat together, which is to put into the chat, I think, okay, I forgot to say this, ask us to go into the, hover over your tile. Most of you, I think all of you are pretty familiar with this, so I was sort of skipping it. But you could put where you are located in your name in the tile. If you hover over the tile and go to the ellipsis, see if that works. Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Laura. Hi, Shelley.
Hi.
Okay, so what we're going to do is go into the chat, put in our names. For some reason, my chat box is not opening up. Put in your names, your location, and a question that you have relative to a possible social system mapping typology. In other words, what are you curious about relative to this topic? So I'm going to put my own self in here. and you guys all jump in. Does anybody, and obviously if you're on the phone and you don't want to do the chat thing, that's fine. Anything I invite us to do, anyone is totally free to not do for whatever reason you choose not to, so don't feel pressured anywhere. And I'm just going to take a moment to, let's all take a moment to just scan each other's. Okay. Okay, so let me go back to sharing. And just a second. My technology is behaving mildly strangely today, so I apologize. I'm moving a little slowly. Oops. No, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. So, did I share my screen? Everybody's muted. Okay, thank you, Kara. Okay, so just as a preparation for the activity we're going to do in a few minutes, I want you to start to think about a network or a social system map, a social system that you've either mapped recently or are thinking about mapping, just to use as an example in our upcoming activity. And as I talk through the characteristics, which I'm going to do in a few minutes, to start to think about where does your example fit on those spectrums. But one second. Before we get into this morning session, and I was sort of thinking about this whole thing a little more, for me, out of the box than I usually do with in doing Zoom sessions, because I don't feel like I'm a great facilitator. But so we're going to do a new technical thing, but also as I was thinking about this session, I was really thinking about how everyone is calling in from somewhere in the world, and one of the things that's happening everywhere is this virus stuff, and that all of us, anyone who shows up could easily be dealing with all kinds of disruption and challenges. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, acknowledge what's going on in the world and what's probably going on in some of your lives. And to acknowledge that if our lives aren't already being impacted, they will be in coming days and weeks, and that whatever we thought was normal 2 months ago may never be normal again. Whatever happens, this will end, but it will probably leave changes in its wake. So partly I just wanted to say how much I appreciate that you're all taking the time at this point in history to show up and be part of this conversation. And as I was thinking about that, I realized I wanted to share a thing with you. I've shared this with a couple of you, I know. But so 10 years ago, I really abruptly and unexpectedly quit my job, which Tim was subcontracting me under. So that meant I actually quit both of our jobs, you know, over the course of a 24-hour decision-making period. And there was a lot of good reason for that, and there was a lot of principle behind that, but it was rather a big upheaval and disruption for us. And around that time, I was really into reading Meg Wheatley, and I came across, I don't know if any of you have seen, if you know Meg Wheatley, and then her book Perseverance, and then in the very beginning of the book, there's this prophecy from the Hopi Elders that they published in 2000. And I just, as I was preparing for this session, I wanted to read it to you because it's meaningful in relation to who's here. So this was written in Arizona on June 8th, 2000, to my fellow swimmers. Here is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They're being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say that we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above the water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and our journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration, for we are the ones we have been waiting for. And so when we let go of the shore, we took heart from that, and I used to read that pretty regularly, just to remind myself that it was the right thing to do, even though it was really risky and scary. And now, sometimes it just seems really strange to me that in letting go of the shore, where we have ended up is in the middle of a river with a software platform and a mapping vision. That just seems so strange to me sometimes. It makes perfect sense on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's just bizarre. But the thing that I really, now I'm beginning to echo. Okay, the thing that that's really what I wanted to express today is that when we did that, we knew that there would be people that one day we would look up and say, here's who's here with us. And the people that come to that sumApp has brought and the vision of the mapping has brought are those. I recognize that those are the people, and I feel grateful every day that I get to work with the smartest, coolest, most purposeful people in the planet. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and celebrate you all and say how much I appreciate you. Okay. So I'm going to go back to our reason for being here today. So Jim was the first person who asked me about a typology, and I was kind of like, a typology, what? I just sort of go with the flow, in case you can't tell, and I just sort of see what comes up, and I don't have a whole lot of, forceful steering going on. So, but other people have brought things up along the same line, brought the topic up from sort of different directions. And so I thought, okay, well, I have had a lot of mapping experience. And so in order to have this discussion today, at first I didn't have any idea where to start. I was like, I don't know anything. And then I thought, okay, well, there are, now that I've done as many maps as I've done, which I couldn't count at the moment, a number of dimensions that I realize that I'm sort of unconsciously, I'm implicitly looking to understand where is this potential map? Where are the clients or the people who represent this potential map or who are asking me to help them make this map? Where do they, like, I'm looking across these dimensions and I'm trying to understand them, because, let me back up a second. So when thinking about a typology, one of the things that I think is challenging is that every map is really different. It's like individuals, and how do you have like, I get that there's typologies for individuals, but on the other hand, it's like every single situation, every single context comes with its own set of dynamics. And every time I try to show up with a plan, the plan just gets knocked aside because I forgot to anticipate, that this isn't their value, or that they don't have that much money, or that they don't have this kind of time, or that that's not their purpose, or whatever it is I forgot to think about. And so I realized what I'm sort of unconsciously doing is navigating in a river with a bunch of sort of boulders that I'm trying not to crash into. And so in order to not crash into the boulders, I need to understand all these things about the project. And so I thought, well, okay, I can make a list of that. And I did that. And so I'm going to sort of talk you through this list briefly, high level. As I'm doing that, you can start to think about the dimensions in relation to your project. And then I'm going to have you list them and talk about them. So Dimensions, the number of members. I've done maps with 20 people, and I've done maps with 1,250 people. So all and how many people are part of the map has a big impact on how deep you can go with it, what kinds of questions you can ask, how you do your rollout with it. So numbers, intended time frames. Some of our maps are aimed at a particular moment in time. There's an event coming up, the people want to map the event, and once it's done, they don't really have any vision for continuing to keep that map. So it's a one-off event-based thing, and some of our maps are intended to be long-term, that people say, okay, this is it's gonna evolve, it's gonna mature, we're gonna learn with it. The purpose of the network, there are, I've really come to notice there are really different contexts. In my sort of initial assumptions, the networks were always explicit groups that are aiming at explicit changes like social justice or climate change or food security, things like that. Those are purposeful networks. But we also have a lot of maps where the map is really about cohorts of some kind of training program. Usually it's a leadership training program, and they want to network people. They want to increase connectedness not only within a cohort but across subsequent cohorts, so that people can find who was into X or Y, who went through this program 2 years ago, because I know we still sort of will share the same language, and that could be helpful for me. Is the inspiration to do the map coming from members who will, like, from people in the network members, or is it coming from staff or some higher level drivers? Is its use to increase the agency, the ability to reach out and self-organize, and to start to help people think differently about what does it mean to be connected and what is a network? So is the map's intended use that increased agency and self-organizing, or is it really more about analysis and evaluation and finding ways that staff can intervene? Is the budget low? Is it a do-it-yourself project, a movement that doesn't have much money? Is it a big budget? Let me just say, I forgot to say this before I started. This list is in the Padlet thing that I'm going to put you in the activity of, so you can re-access it yourself. So if you're feverishly taking notes, which it looks like some of you might be doing, I apologize for letting you get that far. I'm trying to keep up with my fast talking. You'll have access to this. Is the system, and I have discovered that this is a really relevant, important dimension in thinking through what's possible. I'm going to back up a little bit once more. Part of my thinking about typologies is recognizing that I have, in some degree, and if those of you have read my interviews with Aldo Demore, and Aldo has a very firm vision about a very deep and extensive participatory process that he does before he maps anything. So he's getting language, he's getting all this stuff, and it's very participatory. And I'm recognizing that sometimes between Aldo and I, we have made it sound like you have to do it that way. You have to start with this very participatory process up front. And one of the things I've realized is that if I come in with this is the ideal process, I can really sort of, in a context where that ideal process simply isn't possible, or the people aren't ready for it, it's not helpful for me to have that like, oh, this is perfect and you guys aren't good enough because you're not doing our perfect process. And I've realized that basically what I'm doing is I'm just trying to find what's the path to move them forward in their goals that they imagine a map might be part of. And in that process, I spend a lot of time trying to understand what do they think this map is going to do for them. And often they think it's going to do more than the process that they're proposing seems likely. And so I spend a lot of time telling people, well, this is great. We'll do this. I think this is really valuable, and this will move us forward. But I don't think what we're planning on is going to give you that particular goal unless we start to get to that particular goal, we're going to need to add some dimensions to it. We're going to need to add more training, more engagement, more sense making. So I do a lot of time, spend a lot of time sort of managing expectations, and at the same time encouraging forward movement with whatever the constraints are. Another thing I could have said about these dimensions is their constraints. In one dimension, in one direction or another, what's possible is being constrained by these dimensions. Okay, so another one is is people's literacy, is the collective system literacy. So is this group of people fairly savvy? Like the human systems dynamics map, those people are pretty system savvy. And then there are lots of places where people are not so system savvy, or they just have a very strong black and white, we have a purpose, and you know, there's one answer, and a map is going to somehow still help us all come together. I put those on, I think I meant them in the opposite order, but the other thing is their systems literacy explicit? Do they use words and jargon that tell me that they understand self-organizing, setting conditions, et cetera? Or do they have sort of an intuitive but not explicit understanding of systems? All of that informs what's possible and how we move forward. Is it, so sort of related to the purpose of the network, is it a change ecosystem? A big echo from, okay, thanks. Or is it a relationship network? So for instance, the cohorts are more of a relationship network paradigm, and the explicit change goals are more of a change ecosystem paradigm. Is it a mature network? Is it a brand new network? That makes a big difference. One of the differences it makes is, are there clear influencers who will advocate for the map, who you can enlist to help move things forward, or are there none? And in a brand new cohort context, there won't be any. So what do we do with that? Because they don't know the people yet. And they don't know who has emerged as an influencer, and they don't know if there's anybody who thinks mapping is cool. Their comfort with uncertainty. I walked into this assuming that everybody who did this kind of mapping was going to be all about, yes, it's unfolding. Yes, we're going to learn as we go. Yeah. And I discovered that no, there's lots of people, and especially foundations and institutions, where they want to know this is going to happen on this day, and this is the outcome, and this is what we're going to do. And I need all the answers tomorrow, and put it all in a proposal so that I can, and I spent a lot of time going, I don't know, but I don't know, but I don't know. So I've gotten better at dealing with that, but that's another dimension. Is it a relatively homogeneous group? Is there a lot of homophily, or is there, is there more homophily or less homophily? Not just around the obvious things like identity, but also around systemic literacy, around ways of thinking about things, around strategies. Are they in a resistance strategy, a reform strategy, a re-envision strategy? All of those kinds of differences, are those, are they sort of all on the same page in a lot of ways, or are they really philosophically on different pages? And then the last one, and this one has the biggest impact, is how long are they giving me to make the map? Some people, like I have one client where we start planning, this is the biggest one, and it takes us 9 months to go from beginning of the discussion to the big event. And so that one is a leisurely process, and I can do whatever they want. And, but sometimes people, call me up and say, we need this in 4 weeks. Can you do that? And I'll be like, well, I'm going to give you a bunch of deadlines, and if you can stick to your deadlines, yes, we can, but there's not a whole lot of participatoriness. There's not going to be a whole lot of creativity. There's not going to be a whole lot of buy-in. We're going to slap some things in the survey and run with it. And if that's what you want, I'll go there, but there's not going to be a lot of buy-in. It's not, like we'll try that as an experiment, and then we may come back after that and say, okay, do we want to take this further and begin to involve people, or get more buy-in, get more creativity and shared in participation? or are you happy and we're done? So there's all those dimensions. That was a lot. I'm not addressing here. I know that I'm seeing a little bit in the chat that there's some interest in the organization and people connections, as well as mapping sort of a network of networks. And those are part of this discussion, but they're also whether you do paired like a linked to projects or don't, or whether you start to map a network of networks, that the strategy you would use to get there is still going to be informed by the dimensions that I've listed, and there may well be more dimensions. So I just want to acknowledge that there are people in this chat room who've made lots of maps as well as me, and maybe have some other dimensions bubbling up and would say, oh, you didn't think of this and you didn't think of that. So I want to, we'll make space for those to emerge. Okay, so I'm sort of like scanning the questions and getting myself in that place where I don't know if I should go here or should go there. So I'm trying to just go with my agenda. So what I wanted to do next was to say that, so what I wanted to do next was introduce you to Padlet. So this is, and I'm gonna use this. So first of all, we already did the chat intro. Oh, Kara, this is where it would be great. Thank you. You read my mind. So everyone, Kara just put a link in the chat. And so if you want to do this experiment using a little bit of sort of post-it clustering collaborative software, go ahead and link on that link to Padlet that Kara put in the Slack. And it will ask you, it will just ask you for your name. It won't ask you to log in. It won't put you through a bunch of hoops unless my many tests of it have somehow become irrelevant. And is anybody, I can't see if there's more it doesn't tell me that people are in, so I can't see if anyone is doing that or not. Okay, Shelley's in. Anyone else in? And please feel free to unmute yourself unless it makes an echo and say things too. Is there a certain board we go to?
I'm in, but it doesn't let me type anything in it yet.
Okay, it doesn't.
Do you want our name and location as comment to the sticky note, or do you want it as a separate sticky note?
All in one. So, okay, the name and location. So what we're gonna do, let me just overview what we're gonna do so that those of you who are in, Laura, you're in, can you click on, okay, if you go down to the bottom right, am I screen sharing still? No, I will screen share for a moment and hopefully that will help. I have this weird thing where everything important keeps hiding behind stuff. Can you see my screen now? Okay, so if you go down, if you're in, so you should be seeing this. Okay, and then if you're in, you should be able to click on a plus sign, and it sort of pops it up way down at the bottom of the screen, so you kind of have to drag it up, but it will put your name in there, and then you could put, what we're going to do is we're going to put your network, so I'll just say that's a network I work with. And then what we're going to you can click on this if you want to open it up, and you'll see that list that I was just sharing with you. So if you want to go back to that as a reference while you're doing this, you can, and then just go through, and I did this. Okay, I can see people's cards. They're way down towards the bottom. If you drag them up, no one else can drag your cards, so I can't put your cards in a place that is more visible, but you can if you'd like. And for instance, here is, I'm going to trash that. Here's one version of a map that I've worked on where I listed the dimensions that are relevant to this particular map. I have, and I did two, wait, oh, I guess I deleted one of them that I shouldn't have deleted, but that's okay. Okay, so, so basically I'm just asking you, if you want to do this, to put your, oh, I see, it doesn't put your name in there. Okay, so put your name in your card if you haven't already, and then just list out the various dimensions that are relevant that you know of in this map that you're thinking about. And again, like if you're piling your card on top of somebody else's card, let me just, I'm gonna move mine out of the way there, but just take care not to cover up somebody else's space. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes. Do you think 3 minutes is enough? Is anybody stuck and panicking and needing help? And if anybody is just saying, I'm not going to play this game with you, that's just fine. And if you would prefer to just put it on a piece of paper yourself, you can do that as well.
And you're traveling. I'm doing now what?
Oh,
Just
letting them know.
Sorry, was that something for me to respond to, Jim?
no,
I'm in
I
the
was just
checkout
giving you a
stage.
heads up. I assume you can't do anything where you're at. So.
Well, not on the Padlet, no.
Okay.
I can
Well, I am
talk. In a minute, I can talk.
it was just a heads up.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Rebecca, are you okay? I see a note in the. Also, if you just double click on the background, that should do it as well.
Sorry, Christine, are we putting in the characteristics of that network right now? Which
Yep.
is the step we're doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a brief description and the characteristics from, or the dimensions from that, that list that I made. Like
Okay.
which side do they generally, and don't think about it too hard, and don't worry about like if they're sort of in the middle, they're just plunk in what feels relevant to you. And so Rebecca, still no luck?
There's something over the list right now.
Over
the list of characteristics that we're supposed to be responding to, I
there
think.
is? Okay, I just moved it. Wait, oh, hang on a second. Hang on, sorry.
I think somebody had a little sticky over it.
I didn't see that. I'm refreshing I see Seth's on top of somebody else's sticky. I moved
Ryan has a sticky on top of the list.
I'm on top of my own.
Okay. Are you making two?
No, I had to
Seth.
re-logged in and I couldn't get rid of my original anonymous one.
I see. Okay.
Christine, your sticky is all the way over to the right now.
Yeah, I put it there in
Okay.
case, if it was being covered up by somebody else's, even though it doesn't look that way to me. Can everybody at least see the purple one? Okay.
No, I can't get it.
Kara, are you willing, are you able, no, I need you to do breakouts.
Do you want me to work
Yes.
with Rebecca?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind. Kara, could you put those two in a step, Jim and Rebecca in a, thank you, Jim.
I can't read this.
And we'll take another, just.
The purple thing is super tiny to read and I'm on a big screen.
Can you double click on it, on the picture?
Okay.
Jim, my suggestion would be, if you're working with Rebecca, for you to just input her, for her to just tell you her stuff and you to input it, because that's probably going to be the quickest. If you don't mind, I would do that if I were. I don't know why that thing keeps popping up. I don't know. Interesting. So is everybody, I'm seeing cards that have network descriptions but don't have the dimensions on them. Oh, I guess they're all getting dimensions in there. Just wanting to make sure everybody's understanding and content with what they're doing. And I appreciate your tolerance of this experiment. Kara, did we lose you? How about when you feel done, you put it in the chat so that I have a sense of where we're at. Thanks, Lisa. There you are.
I was helping Jim and then got stuck over there.
Okay. Are they making progress?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I'm gonna, who else is, looks like maybe they're making progress. Okay.
Christine, can I ask a question related to one of the characteristics?
Yeah.
What's the difference between homophily and like sort of same, different, like, I know it's in the context of social network analysis, but where should we be focusing on whether there's difference or not? Just say more about that category.
So maybe, yeah, okay.
And don't answer it if you want to focus on other stuff. Totally
No,
fine.
no, it's not about focusing on other stuff. It's about, maybe it's what it's really about in my mind is how much on the surface or how much awareness is there about tensions in the network. Because sometimes a network will present as we're all the same, we're all on the same page, we're all in agreement. And you pushing very hard at all against that assumption can be just hazardous in a way that I often feel like is not really my job. Like I'm not the network's therapist, I'm their mapper. And if they're not ready to map something, maybe I don't. So I will test, but so it sort of has to do with what ready are they? How much inherent tension is there between different perspectives and how ready are they to explore those tensions and actually bring them to the surface and deal with them? I think that's kind of where my intuition was going with that.
Very helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
Just a little technical point. I don't know if other people are seeing this too. I keep accidentally moving my tab over top of other people's because the tablet page doesn't refresh a lot for me. And there's a lot more going on your screen, Christine, than is going on mine. I don't know if other people are having the same experience.
Well, the thing I'm going to do next, and I'm thinking if people are, it looks like most people are done. So let's start moving into this next step is have Kara separate you guys into groups of 3. And so my thinking is that if you go into a group of 3, if you could sort of drag your cards next to each other and maybe, and it might need you to refresh your screen, and I'm hoping that that works so that you can sort of make different little clusters for each of your 3, and then talk about them. And so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna split you into groups of 3. Welcome back, Jim and Rebecca. Split you into groups of 3, have you pull your cards together so that you can look at them next to each other. Sort of you'll need to sort of agree on, let's go to the upper right, or let's go to the lower left, or let's go to the lower center. Sort of between the 3 of you, agree on a location, pull your cards over there. Maybe you need to refresh your screen if you're not seeing all the cards. And then in this card here, the small group discussion, I've said, so, you know, share your card. Let's take about 10 minutes. Share your card and your situation with each other. There's 3 of you, so try to split the time up equitably. And then, so share your card briefly, and then together look for patterns. What's the same, what's different across your cards? And then think about, so what in terms of what are the tensions? Where are there tensions in these different situations? What's coherent? And then how might these patterns inform your process or your next step? And go ahead.
Hey, Kara, when you break us up, can you put a timer in the chat? I mean, in the breakout?
She thumbed up. 10 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions about this? Can I have her go ahead and say go? I do appreciate the rough edges and that you're tolerating them.
Yeah.
Okay. So you 3 were in a room together.
It's true.
Yeah.
I think there was some difficulty with the platform.
Yeah. Sorry. Like, every platform has its drawbacks. It's like there is no such thing as perfect platform. And you can only test it so much by yourself or with one other person. And then it's always, well, that's my experience. I'm just complaining, but yeah, sorry.
From my perspective, the only thing was there was overlap of stuff, and we can't control that.
Yeah.
That's the, otherwise I could read everything on it, but it was just the overlap. But I also have a giant screen, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another minute, Kara?
Not yet, hopefully.
Head back here.
Rebecca, were you able to get a card made and be part of a conversation?
The latter, which was the most important.
Yeah.
A quick but excellent conversation.
Okay, good.
I'm a great facilitator.
Good, good. Good. So is everybody back then, Kara? Looks like?
Yes.
Kara, where is Rebecca's? Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Shut up.
Okay, so I kind of wish I could have been part of all of your conversations. And I'm curious what patterns people are seeing and what came out of their discussions. So we don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to say I'm going to ask someone to speak and share their insights, and let's make that be someone who knows they're not going to stick around for an extra half hour. And if you know you're going to stick around for an extra half hour, maybe hold, because we don't have a lot of time. So, but who would like to go first to share your insights? Seth.
Go.
Oh, David. I'll go with David because he unmuted himself first.
Yeah. There's supposedly a limit, a numerical limit to how big something like a tribe can become. I think it's like 270. And I noticed that the networks that were listed were definitely under that number.
Seth, do you want to go?
Yeah, because I won't stick around for the second section. With both Rebecca and I think we noticed that we both thought it was important for us to query the members themselves about some aspects of the purpose and intentions that they had with regard to the network. You know, rather than just assume those things.
Yep.
And also notice that these dimensions seem to be mostly from the point of view of the consultant, and thinking that there might be another some value to looking at dimensions that might be from the point of other points of view, either participants or the agency or whatever.
I noticed that there was actually quite a bit of difference on size of network, from, you know, hundreds to just dozens, and there was some range of type of network to very focused on change goals and more connection or shared learning. Really different budget, like do it yourself to private foundation funded. And there was similarity. I kind of wondered if there was like a range of similarity on age of networks, which I think was interesting. Like how long they've been, like, cause it's kind of been this emerging field. And it's something like I don't know, I wasn't like consistent in reading every one of them, but low system literacy seems like a potential to really exploit that, as far as like, can we offer some real just system, you know, part of these sessions or something that's like offering real more system literacy. And of course I'm thinking of that as a human systems dynamics professional, you know, part of that network and stuff too. But
yeah, cool. Well, I just want to acknowledge that we're at the top of the hour, and so those of you who are new to this, we stop at the top of the hour. We have a formal thank you for being here and smooth sailing going forward, and then whoever wants to stick around, we'll stick around for an extra up to a half an hour for a very open-ended discussion. We can either continue with this discussion, or we can go in a different direction, just whatever people stick around for want to do. So if you need to go this instant, thank you for coming. If you've got one more minute or one more just brief, if you could put in a chat, one like insight that you're taking away, that would be great. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here, and we'll wait and see who remains after everyone has checked out. Thanks. Have a good day. Stay healthy.
Thanks, Christine, and everyone. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Ben.
This work is getting more relevant. I think that's one of the things that will change.
Yes. Thank you, Ben. Okay. I think maybe there's a couple of you planning on jumping off still, or is everybody planning on sticking around?
Staying.
Okay. Feel free to jump off at any time. Doesn't mean you have to stick around for the whole half hour or be considered rude. So maybe the next, I would just love to hear more of the patterns those of you who are still here saw, and you just invite the rest of you to speak. Who's going? Jim, you're unmuted.
Didn't mean to be.
Okay.
I'm curious if
Somebody want to say?
notice that have a specific implication for a type of map or features on a map. Like if it gets above X size, use this map, or if it has Y purpose, use this type of map, or if this could eventually evolve into a set of preformed templates to help the mapping process put together, where you could say, if your network has the following characteristics, go to this template. If it's these characteristics, start with this template to help speed up the mapping process.
And maybe not even, sorry to jump in, but maybe not even a full template, but even just tools. I know Jim and I were talking a little bit ago about, you know, wholesale grabbing of code out of other people's Kuma's maps, and having a little code base of some of those snippets that we use and which ones would be useful.
Yeah, I had a similar question just coming into the session at the beginning around, you gather data and information and you think about the purpose and the intentions and all of that of your network and the mapping, and then how do you create views and how do you translate it in Kumu to have, to digest it and to share it and to have it meet these different aspects, in line with the characteristics of the network, but then also kind of delivering or directed towards the intentions of all of that. And I think this is related to Shelley's thing, around size and tensions. And this is also a part where I'm curious.
I visualized that snippets repository, and then that template idea that maps to not the typology, but here's some examples, here's their characteristics, and here's the code pieces that you might use to create the views to illustrate that. That would be a cool resource to build, and we could do it in small pieces. We've already got a place to put snippets, I think, in the Slack group, but it could be in a Google Doc.
Just to put one other thing out there.
Idea. It seems to me that would be tremendously useful. When we're doing maps, we find they start off as one thing, and then they kind of change into something else as we're doing with the client and with the participants. So pre-planning a network map, I think, is really, really difficult because it depends so much on the interaction of your client and the participants on the map. It's still going to went in and out at. And having a series of little jigsaw bits you can fit together to allow your map to change, I think it'd be really useful.
So, Ryan, you're muted.
Well, not clicked in. I have to click in to unmute. The one other thing that I really saw potential in this, so I'm looking at this as some of the others in the group are from a consultant's perspective. I really do see a set of questions here that are useful up front as you're thinking through what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what information exists already. I think one of the things that we've found really powerful and maybe fits into one of these dimensions, but maybe doesn't, is there an existing database, whether that's of people or of organizations or of an existing list of topics that are the core, these are the goals and objectives of our organization that we can draw from as either a visualization resource or a survey building resource. And I think that, just kind of throwing those ideas out there, I think could go to kind of a share or a conversation.
I had one. Thinking about this typology a while ago, and just this is a very limited perspective, but the idea of thinking about what is the value propositions for the participants in the network. And the categories that I came up with they're related to ones that Christine had proposed also earlier. It was sort of a me focused, kind of a directory. How can I see myself in relation to other people? What's people's human capital? What can I see? And each person in the map has that value proposition. But then the next one is sort of what do we see ourselves in affinities, intentions that are common, who's like me or who's very unlike me, but from a we perspective. And then a third one is the us perspective of all of us making sense of the map together, wherever that goes. And then there's a couple other ones. One is if you're intentionally trying to do something with the community, like weave it together, you can use the map from that perspective. And the fifth one is just assessment. If you've got some theory of change about the community and you create an intervention, or you think certain relationships are important to achieve that purpose, and map those relationships and see how they change when you do interventions in the community. That last one comes directly from Christine.
Is that a, bye, Ryan.
And there are a set of views for each of those typology, each of those value propositions that you would want to create.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just relate what we said with like code snippets, patterns. I think that could all, also what you said now, Jim, could all fit together. It's like, what is the value? What is the kind of view that would, you know, support people to get that kind of value? What is the code to implement it in Kumu? And then I think that, yeah, I think that's definitely one takeaway for me from this call, that collaborating on that could be very valuable. And it's not, yeah, I don't really think we need like a super fixed typology, because one of the things I'm definitely taking out of the exchange is that networks are so different and they're evolving. So they're, like each network is changing so much in and of itself, but then every network is also quite different. And I mean, they have a few things in common, like people and organizations, but there's also a huge diversity. So I'm thinking more of you know, different building blocks and patterns that you could just draw upon and use and exchange is maybe more useful than anything too fixed.
So one thing I'm wondering is if there's enough, I mean, it's starting to snow, light fluffy flakes outside. I just noticed that. So I think you all know this, but if you don't, it's Tim and I have a lot on our plates. We're always working really hard, and both to support ourselves with our own mapping consulting, as well as building out sumApp and dealing with all the drama of having technology as a baby. And so this, I think I would love for us to be able to provide that sort of a collaborative resource. And I know that you know, that's like way down the road. And so for us to lead it or provide it, I know that I learn a lot as I go, and I make lots of notes, and those could be dumped somewhere, but it would be really hard for anybody to make sense of them or organize them in a meaningful way. I mean, that's what I could contribute at the moment. But so I'm wondering if there's enough desire for that in this group to have some mini bit of self-organizing around making that happen, rather than me adding it as that would be a great thing to do someday, and I'm gonna let it weigh me down thing. And maybe there isn't, and which is fine. I think it would be wonderful. I think a lot of people would really value and appreciate that. And I think it would be really fun to see people working on it together and to get to contribute to it. So that's the question I'm holding at the moment as a result of this conversation. Drew, you're muted. If you're talking, you're muted. Looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
Sorry, what was that?
It looked like you were saying something. But...
No, I was just saying that I'd be happy to talk about that. Yeah. I mean, just lending each other, you know, bits of code, etc., to you know, to be able to build that set of building blocks, I think it'd be really useful. Yeah. I mean, Kumu does that to some extent anyway, the documentation. You know? But I think we could narrow it down and make it slightly more purposeful in this group. Yeah.
Jim, I know.
What if we in the Slack channel for sumApp, we've got a Slack channel on snippets there? I can't remember.
I think so. Hang on, I'm opening it up, and it's not opening properly. Of course.
So yeah, we've got useful code snippets, and we've got only 7 people signed up for that, and like nothing there. But we could use that as a place to have a conversation about building whatever makes sense to capture code snippets. So, you know, it might be as simple as a Google Doc that we start with. You know, I have a Word document that's got a bunch of random code snippets. I think Drew does as well, and other people might. Yeah. But we could at least just sort of pile in there and use that as a place to have a conversation about code snippets. We might also create another channel that's about a typology channel, and you know, have a conversational space where we can build on what we've created here together today. I don't know what you were going to do with all of these Padlets, Christine, but it might be a place to dump that if that's possible.
Yeah, I was going to put the Padlet into the deep dive conversation channel, but just a link to the Padlet so that, and I think if you go back in, I don't know if it will let you move your own, edit and move your own cards around if you go back in, depends on how you got in. But I could also, I could put it in the deep dive and then also there just comment on we're adding a new channel about typology and point people to that and put it there as well, if that seems helpful.
Well, and this is Stephanie, and I just wanted to weigh in on what Jim was talking about linking the value proposition to the specific views. I mean, I'm in way over my head getting into this network stuff, and I understand totally the value propositions. I know zip zero about what those views would be. And so it seems like, you know, we're at the point where I know enough to go in and say, okay, who's a local artist who might be interested in my project? And that's great. But what Jim's talking about is way more sophisticated. And I think people need to see the specifics of how to do that, because since I've been involved in this, I see that a lot of networks suffer because they get created, but people don't invest the time to figure out how to go in there and self-organize and search for themselves. Seems to be a huge thing. So if we had these things that were like a, for dummies kind of a thing, how do I get in there and find this exactly? Or if those views were frozen in your network and somehow you could just click and see them without having to understand how to orchestrate those views. It seems like that would be great for everyday users and for people having the confidence that, oh, if I get into this, this is what comes out with it. Because there's so many people who, like me, have an intuitive sense of the power, but I don't have the technical skills to produce those views.
Yeah, just one thing I want to comment on is in case, I can't remember if you're in there, Stephanie, but and I'm looking for the link right now. We have started a social system mapping network map of social system mappers, and one of my intentions with that is for that to be both a place that we can all use for our own network and our own community of learning, to find each other, etc., but also as an example, so that, and Tim and I intend to keep it sort of like the most as up to date as possible in terms of our latest thinking on how to make this better. Like, I've had a lot of ideas in the last month about using presentations and embedding videos and presentations with little interactive directions to help people learn. And so we will be doing all of that in this social system mapping map. And I just want to make sure you all know about it and know that you're welcome to be in it. And I was just going to get the link, the opt-in link, in case you aren't in it. But is everybody aware of that? Because, the other piece of the reason I wanted to say that was so that both it can be used as a model for at least our best thinking about how to help people enter into a map and how to make different views. And you can also pull the code of the views from it, because you can access the settings from our map and then just copy the code for that. Does everybody know about that map?
No, I didn't know about it.
I could swear I sent you a very personal.
You very well could have.
I'm
not saying you didn't send it to me. I'm just saying I did not see it.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I just put a link in the chat. So you're all invited to both put yourselves in the map, and then you can in the sumApp project, and then you can access the map. And also, if there are other people that you're connected to in this network that you notice aren't on the map, use that link to invite them. And Shelley, yes.
Could you also give us pointers about how to connect up into the Slack workspace?
Oh, absolutely. Kara, do you have can you give, I can, yes?
But so that was, You know, the suggestion to create the channels in Slack, I just completely forgot about the community of practice space. Does it make sense to split our energies that way, or just like focus on creating the repository in the community of practice and a typologies discussion space there?
Where do you mean, when you say the community of practice, where do you mean, Jim?
Basically the Zoho space.
Oh, you know, I've given up on the Zoho space.
Oh no.
It's
You
great.
100
It's great,
plus
but
articles in there.
what, Jim?
Yeah, more than 100 articles that are juicy.
No. I'm not giving up on the knowledge base, but I'm giving up
okay.
on it as a community space. It just feels like people can handle Slack better than they can handle Zoho. So I'm not trying to drive community interaction to it, but definitely the knowledge base, like a documentation, is there and will continue to get built out. But that's just, you know, our support, you know, like our documentation of the app. It's less about conversations. So I'm thinking the conversations are more, people engage in them easier in Slack than Zoho has a little bit of a weirdness about logging in, and it's not in real time. So I'm just, that's kind of bailing on that and noticing where the energies go.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, whatever you want to do. So Kara, can you put that, the knowledge base link in there again, also in the chat for people?
And it might be that as templates and as a tool set emerges, it might be that there's ways we can sort of formalize that and put it in the knowledge base as after it's kind of gotten a little more developed, so that it's more publicly available than Slack. But I think the conversation and the emergent part and the engagement part works better in Slack. Others? Thoughts? Drew?
Okay, I'm gonna have to go, I'm afraid, so we'll see you again.
Thank you for coming. So good to see you. Take care.
Thank you. Yes, we'll see you.
Drew's a crumbly.
So, yeah, I am.
Crumbly. That evidently in Britain, they're calling the people over 70 who are vulnerable populations crumblies.
Oh, geez.
That's what he told me. He said he's a crumbly. That's me. Anyway, other stuff, anyone? Are we good? We got more to talk about?
I just have a question about if we, how many people would actually participate in those Slack channels around these questions? I mean, now we're in a small group, so it's hard to.
Yeah.
I always have an intention to participate in Slack, but don't keep it open regularly, you know, on my desktop to do it. So I kind of go in fits and spurts of enthusiasm.
I've put the Slack icon in my app tray, and it's always letting me know if there are comments related to me now. So it's become part of my, slowly becoming part of my practice. But yeah, there's like a 90-10 ratio between people's connected to something and actually participating in online stuff, just platform after platform.
Yep. Yep. One of the things that I notice is that if you put it there and think who might be interested in actually just ping them, just at them and invite them into the conversation, you're more likely to get engagement. But so but that's work in generating involvement.
So Christine, you've struggled with this for a long time. So I'm curious, do you have any notion of potential funders for expanding out sumApp into these expanded areas? Because resources are just an issue, you know, as all of us are trying to balance making a living with the new cutting edge development. Do you have any notions of people who would be interested in resourcing this kind of thing?
How do you mean resourcing shared learning and exploration, or resourcing making maps for communities, or resourcing developing.
I mean, going back to what Jim was saying about here is the value proposition that we see from this mapping activity. Here's what maps look like. Here's a do it yourself so you can easily do this, kind of a getting started group for people who are kind of like where I am, just kind of getting started, that kind of it seems like to bring it to scale, the little bit I've been around this whole issue of how to get to the views and the value proposition has got to be clear from the get-go and made easier to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm not real tech savvy. So, I mean, I'm not wanting to really get in there and figure this out whatsoever. I totally get the value proposition. I'm not interested in that. So a lot of the visionaries are not wanting to race to how do I figure out how to do these views.
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out if there's somebody who is out there who sees the value of bringing this to scale. I mean, we're all getting emails about how people are moving their stuff online.
Yeah.
So the power of networks so that we can be self-organizing is so important.
Yeah. I confess, since we started, we have mostly funded sumApp development ourselves, and all of the collective learning around the processes around it. It's all, I don't that's not my, I don't know how to go fundraise. I mean, I could if I had time, and I figured, and I made that, and that was my goal. And I said, okay, I'm going to set my mind to learning how to do this. But it's, I've got a lot of things I'm learning all the time and so I'm like in this middle of this really rapidly flowing river, and that's not my skill set. And so the answer is, I know it's necessary, and I don't have answer, for me to find the solution to that.
Right.
Yeah, there will come a time when I absolutely have to do that. And there's two parts to it. One is developing sumApp out more in the ways that people are constantly asking for. And the other part is developing the tool sets and the learning and the whole methodology, that whole piece. I can focus on sumApp, but that other part, my hope is that somewhere along the line, there will be enough people will generate enough interest to try and figure that out. Because I know I won't ever.
No, I think it has to be, I think it has to be a group effort. I think we have to put that intention out there and cobble together some pieces to do it, is my guess.
I concur, and I like your guessing that way.
And I am willing to be on the scouting party for that. I've been on the scouting party for that for quite a while. So, I think eventually it will show up. But to your point, Shelley, or Laura, whoever said it, to create the extra time to do it, to, get the Slack button back up. I used to have it up and I've seemed to have lost it, but anyway, could get it back. But we're all having to prioritize. So I think if we all listen for it, as my Apache teacher would say, one of her biggest things was, so Stephanie, what are the resources everywhere that you simply are not seeing? She said they called the Apache the vanishing people because they could live in regions that nobody else could possibly exist in. And it was because of their creativity and seeing resources. Mm-hmm. So we just need to get as creative and seeing resources as Geronimo was, and we'll be in great shape. Mm-hmm.
What it makes me think of is, right here, all the people that keep coming into these places, their resources. So I'm thinking in the code snippet channel, for example, putting out an invite, as Christine said, about inviting people into Drew, Ryan, Shelley, you, Stephanie, Katie Mammon, all the people that we know have maps, and just physically invite them there. And create enough of a list of people. We've got all the people that show up for, if you give me the list, Christine, of all the people that show up for the deep dives and the intros, and just put them in that channel if they've signed up. It might be that there's enough of a critical mass from that we can do a couple of simple things, which is like create a Google Doc repository or whatever that you don't have to do. Anyway, it's just a thought. So I would do that if you give me the lists of people, because I don't have them.
Yeah, I think Kara and I can figure out how to pull that list of both who signed up and who has shown up. We'll figure it out.
Because this is the community I need personally
Yeah.
to thrive here in terms of both learning and passing on my knowledge. So
it's the community I need to thrive also.
right, but you don't have the energy to do that, and
yeah.
Between the rest of us, as Stephanie said, there probably are enough resources hidden in the pockets where the moisture is collecting.
That's right. We just need to change the check into the couch cushions here and see what we can bring to the table, and maybe something bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, to the degree that I'm able to help support that, I mean, I of course I'm going to continue to support it because that's what I'm doing. But to expand that support base for the mapping knowledge, I will do that. And I appreciate all of your efforts and intentions and interests and questions and learning. So, and Kara and I will continue to support these weekly things.
This was such a cool topic.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad it worked out.
Lots of richness there.
Good. Glad it worked out. Okay.
Bye, Shelley.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Stephanie.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Stephanie.